Hello everyone. Alas, I don't get to walk through the woods with you today because I was running to catch the bus and I fell down and hurt myself. So today I'm going to invite you to hang out with me in my living room, and this may be the case for the coming weeks. Today, don't worry about these marks here, these are just some little boo-boos I got from falling down. Today, I want to talk to you about having an awareness of what you're feeding yourself. I'm talking about food for your mind and your heart, because I don't think we realize how much what we do on a daily basis affects the way we feel and the way we look at the world, and therefore the way we go through life. What I'm talking about is unconscious attention. This is when you don't realize how much you're listening to your complaints. There's a lot of complaints going on in there usually, isn't there? Your to-do list, that nagging voice of everything you need to get done and how you're always behind. Your social media feed. You know what I'm talking about. The news, of course, that's a big one. And all these different ways that we keep thinking our way out of presence. Let's take a closer look at them today and see how we can move from this unconscious attention to a whole new way of consciously consuming. I know that there are a lot of people who avoid the news. I used to avoid the news myself because I found it quite traumatic. And there's nothing wrong with that. But notice if it's coming from a place of fear and pushing away, because that may not be the healthiest way to approach the news. On the other hand, there are those of us who can't seem to get enough of it, and you're looking at it sort of every few minutes to see what the latest updates are. Again, there's nothing wrong with that if you're doing it in a conscious way. But if all these updates are feeding you and fueling anger, frustration, despair, hopelessness, divisiveness, all these things, it's good to be aware of that. Personally, I like to keep my eye on what's going on in the world situation. I notice things like how there seems to be more of an emphasis on the economy, more concern even for that than people's lives. I notice how my fellow humans are suffering. I have some friends who are from Iran, actually, some neighbors. Beautiful family. So I'm particularly interested in what's going on in their country and how their family are being affected. So I'm watching with interest as events unfold, and I'm sort of studying humanity. It's very easy to forget when you're looking at the news, when you're taking it in, that actually most of humanity is peaceful and wants peace. We want to live in harmony with each other. By the way, if Claire's watching this, thank you, Claire, for stopping to help me get up when you saw me fall down, and for being so kind as to wait with me until I was okay. There's a lot of kind people in this world, and you'd be forgiven for not realizing that if you're giving so much attention to what's being presented in the news. Remember, this isn't a balanced view of what's going on in the world. This is why we need to be grounded when we take in the news. We need to be aware how it's affecting us. Become conscious of your reaction to what you're taking in. Now let's talk about your social media feed for a bit. There are 3 little dots in the top right of every post. If you don't like it, just unfollow them, which means that you can remain friends, but you don't have to get into the stuff that they're putting out there. You can also hide any ads you don't like. If you are spending hours looking at this stuff on your device and you're scrolling through, watching video after video, reading article after article, meme after meme, whatever it is you're taking in, it has an effect on you. Why don't you try a little experiment? Why don't you say, okay, how about for 3 days, what if I actually start following the kind of content that I would like to see more of? Anything basically that might put a smile on your face, right? Rather than doom and gloom. What if you were to do that? Try a little bit of conscious attention for a while and see how that works out. That doesn't mean every time something upsetting comes across your feed, you get upset and zap it away. The whole point is that you become aware of how you are reacting to everything. Coming back to this place of awareness, right? Awareness. Awareness is everything. When you're aware, you're conscious. You're not unconscious. And by unconscious, I mean almost like in a state of self-hypnosis. That's what Eckhart Tolle refers to it as. When you're unconscious, you're sort of on autopilot and you're just doing things in a habitual way. Same old. And you're sort of at the mercy of your thoughts. And I don't think anyone really wants to live in that way. One of my favorites that I did for most of my life was to focus on the future. So I was giving my unconscious attention to what I imagined I wanted my life to be like, what I imagined would make me happy and fulfilled. Don't we all want this? Don't we all have some kind of fantasy about what would create this state in us? I was basically always thinking my way out of the present moment because the present moment was just never good enough. Unless I was high, then I could relax for a while. We've all had our ways of dealing with stress, haven't we? Notice the mind wandering off into the future. There's nothing wrong with having some pleasant imagination. But if all those thoughts are resulting in you feeling dissatisfied and resentful with your lot, then that's something to be aware of. Every time I achieved what I wanted, happiness wasn't there after all. I ended up finding it right here in the present moment. Surprise, surprise. One of my favorite quotes of all time is by a wise man called Papaji, who said, "You need nothing to be happy. You need something to be sad." Remember that one. Now, what do you do when you become aware that you're doing these things? Unconsciously taking in the news, your social media, focusing on the future, focusing on the past. What do you do when you become aware, when you become conscious of this unconscious attention and unconscious reaction, these ingrained habitual behaviors? What do you do? blame yourself for it, judge yourself for it, and get really down on yourself. That's what most of us do, unfortunately. But I'm here to tell you, you don't have to do that. Hallelujah! You don't have to do that. Please don't do that anymore. I'll tell you what to do instead. When you notice one of these things about yourself, notice it with interest. Sort of like you're studying yourself. Be someone who's gathering information. So let's say, for example, that I become aware of some complaining thoughts about my business and not making enough money, for example. That's a very common one, right? So I become aware, I get lost in thought for a bit, start feeling a bit down, and then I become aware of it. I've just been listening to my complaining mind. I was lost, unconsciously giving my attention to it. But now, because I've noticed it, obviously I'm present. I'm in the seat of awareness, as Michael Singer says, in the seat of awareness, the best place you could ever be. Because you're aware of what's going on in your human experience. What do I do from that place? Well, I don't need to tell myself off. Oh, Aliki, stop doing that. I don't need to exercise false positivity. Now, come on, stop thinking like that, and imagine that you hit this monetary goal. Yes, imagine, visualize. I'm going to make all this money, yes. Again, nothing wrong with visualizing if you want to do that. We're all free to do what we want. I'm telling you what I think is helpful. But remember, nothing overrides your intuitive knowing. So always pay the most attention to that inner feeling of what feels right for you and what doesn't. I don't admonish myself. I don't try to reframe my thinking. First of all, I smile because I became aware of it. I could have stayed lost in it for much longer. Secondly, I say to myself, isn't that interesting? Here I am with every need being met. Enough food to eat, a wonderful shelter over our heads, and somehow there's always enough to pay the bills. What's happening here is, because I'm present, I've stopped looking at things through the distortions of my mind, and I'm able to see the actual situation, which is that there's always enough. There's always enough. And so much to be thankful for. There's also a realization that if I get caught up in worrying about things like finances or performance when it comes to my online work, this can affect the flow of life in my content creation. I would rather give everything up and just stop creating content than to get fixated on some aspect of it that compromises the flow of love. There's no way I'm compromising that. Just by coming back to presence, by coming back to awareness, you see things more clearly. You see things with wise eyes, and you understand things more deeply. It's not just thoughts floating around. Oh, this might happen, that might happen. Oh, wait, remember when that happened? Wait, that person said I should do that. You know what it's like in the mind, right? It's just chaos in there. So then presence becomes something very real in your life, something that you become familiar with rather than some sort of far-off Zen fantasy that's only for a few people who can meditate. Be someone who's always learning. You're always learning about yourself and about life and how you meet life. Learn with interest, with love and compassion. Notice, oh, isn't that interesting? I have a tendency to get lost in reading about this stuff, and then I feel lousy. And then I try and stop myself from doing it to avoid feeling that way. And then I can't help myself. I still look at it, and then I feel guilty. And it's like this vicious cycle. Notice that the present awareness of noticing is enough to make a difference. You have to trust me on this one. If you've just spent an hour consuming some information that has made you feel terrible and you regret doing that, smile, because you've learned something. You've learned, well, I don't want to do that again, right? So you're always learning. Beware of making blanket rules as well. You know, I'm never going to do this and I'm always going to do that. Intuition and wisdom don't work in that way. Let life lead you in the moment. Today, it might be okay to do this thing. Tomorrow, it might not feel right. Go with the flow of life. Learn something every day. Learn something about this character of you, the filters through which you've been looking at life. Be kind to yourself. We really can't control our thoughts. They do just pop up, and they do tend to be negative and repetitive. But we do get to have a lot of say in what we consume and in how we consume it. What you read, what you watch, what you listen to, what you give your attention to. Feel free to share with me in the comments your stories of consuming unconsciously and consciously, because they're two very different things.